Beyond the Gates spoilers for Wednesday, October 1, 2025 teased that Eva was stunned with shock when Thomas, the man who had just crossed the most intimate line with her, turned around and admitted he still wanted Kat back. The truth hit her like a wave of devastation she couldn't contain. Not just the act itself, but the betrayal that followed, the dismissal of their closeness, the way he casually ignored the seriousness of what had happened. The intimacy they shared wasn't born of calculated seduction but of late-night conversations, shared vulnerabilities, the comfort of finding someone who understood the chaos swirling around their lives. Eva allowed herself to believe it meant something, that Thomas's hand caressing the back of her neck, the whispers in the dark, the sighs they shared, were evidence of a connection deeper than lust. Instead, in the cold light of morning, he turned her into a mistake, a distraction, nothing more than a friend who had invited him to dinner. For Eva, the sting of being told, "I just want us to be friends, thank you for the meal," cuts deeper than if he had said nothing at all. Gratitude where there should have been tenderness feels like mockery. In her mind, the scene replays on a loop, Thomas's casual tone against the backdrop of her raw, unguarded heart. She sees her own reflection and despises what she's become, someone willing to cross the line her mother once crossed, someone repeating the generational mistakes she swore she would never mirror. Her mother fills her with anger and dread. Leslie lived in shadows of regret for what happened with Ted, and now Eva fears she has stepped into the same cycle, one that strips her of dignity and control. Meanwhile, Kat senses something is wrong in her relationship with Thomas, but her instinct is not suspicion toward her sister. Instead, she blames herself, believing her sharp tongue, her frequent coldness, and the way she dismissed Eva in the past may have driven a wedge between them. In a rare moment of softness, Kat reaches out, seeking to bridge the distance. She arrives at Eva's apartment, rehearsing words of apology in her head, unaware that inside, Thomas is hiding in the bathroom, his damp hair evidence of the night he shared with her sister. Eva's heart races, panic flooding her veins as she tries to mask her trembling voice and restless energy. She offers Kat excuses, short answers, and forces a polite smile, desperately maneuvering her out the door before disaster strikes. But fate is merciless. Just as Eva is seconds away from sending Kat back into the night with only half-spoken reassurances, the bathroom door opens. Thomas steps out, clad in nothing but a towel, his chest still glistening with moisture. The sight is damning. The silence that follows is thunderous, a suffocating weight pressing down on the room. Kat freezes, her eyes darting between Thomas and Eva, the reality unraveling before her in an instant. Betrayal does not always arrive as a scream, sometimes it lands as a silent implosion, and Kat feels the foundation of her world collapsing. The eruption comes quickly after. Kat's fury burns hot, her words sharp as blades. She accuses Eva of scheming, of knowing exactly what she was doing when she welcomed Thomas into her bed. Eva, cornered and desperate, lashes back. She insists the blame lies with Thomas, that he was the one who blurred the lines, who whispered promises that made her believe she wasn't a fool. To Eva, this is a chance to finally throw off the weight of always being cast as the weaker, more flawed sibling, to assert that Kat is not the victim she paints herself to be. Yet in her bitterness, Eva fails to recognize that her defiance only deepens Kat's wound. Kat's voice cracks when she spits back her condemnation. She calls Eva reckless, cruel, selfish enough to crawl between the sheets with the man her sister loved, a man who was never free to give himself to anyone else. For Kat, this is not just betrayal, it is proof that the bond of family can be shattered beyond repair. Her rage quickly dissolves into anguish, and with tears streaming, she storms out of the apartment. Alone in the night, she seeks solace in the bottom of a glass, pouring drink after drink until her vision blurs. She is strong, yes, but strength is not the absence of pain, it is the endurance of it. Still, as she sits at the bar, thoughts of ending it all creep in, shadows whispering that perhaps escape would silence the torment. The idea terrifies her even as it tempts, and though she may not act on it, the mere presence of the thought is enough to reveal how deeply fractured she has become. Nicole, ever protective, is not blind to what has happened. Though she does not yet know the details, her instincts scream that Eva has crossed a line unforgivable. If Kat's pain worsens, if her spiral threatens her well-being, Nicole will not hesitate to confront Eva directly, to unleash the wrath she has long kept at bay. Nicole has always been the enforcer, the one who shields those she loves, and in this situation, her anger simmers like a storm waiting to break. Back at the apartment, Thomas makes his position clear to Eva, but not in the way she longs to hear. He tells her the night was a mistake, a lapse he cannot allow to happen again. Though not cruel, are cold, pragmatic, a man choosing the easier path of denial rather than acknowledging the bond they briefly shared. For Eva, it is the final blow. She collapses in sobs, feeling discarded, exploited, and foolish. The parallels to her mother's history grow impossible to ignore. Leslie too was ensnared by desire, by fleeting attention, only to be left hollow and ashamed. Eva swore she would not walk that path, and yet here she is, reliving it with terrifying accuracy. She wonders if her very existence born of a mistake doomed her to repeat the same cycle of choices, of heartbreak and regret. The question gnaws at her. Will she let this pain consume her? Will she become the tragic echo of her mother, spiraling further into destructive choices to fill the emptiness? The thought of harming herself flickers, uninvited but persistent. She feels weak, powerless, stripped of her worth. In the quiet of her apartment after Thomas leaves, she contemplates whether there is any reason to continue when everything she touches seems to rot. Thomas, for his part, is not content to let things remain broken. His desperation propels him into motion, fueled by guilt and the burning desire to salvage what he believes he still has with Kat. He chases after her, figuratively strapping rockets to his back, doing everything he can to catch up before she drifts too far into despair. He rehearses his excuses, crafting a story where he was misled, where Eva ensnared him in a moment of weakness. He convinces himself that if Kat can see his remorse, she will forgive him, that love will outweigh betrayal. But the reality is far harsher. When Thomas finally finds Kat, his words tumble out in frantic apologies. He pleads that what happened with Eva was meaningless, a mistake born of confusion, a one-time lapse. But Kat, her eyes hardened by betrayal, refuses to be swayed. To her, there is no such thing as meaningless intimacy, no way to excuse the choice he made. She knows Thomas is skilled at twisting words, at performing sincerity, and she cannot reconcile the man who gave himself so passionately to her sister with the man who now stands professing undying love to her. To Kat, it is hypocrisy laid bare, and no matter how many tears Thomas sheds, the fracture in their bond is beyond repair. Eva, left behind in her grief, breaks down further. The weight of her choices crushes her until her sobs echo through the apartment walls. She clutches at her chest as if she can hold together the pieces of her breaking heart. Leslie, her mother, senses the storm brewing in her daughter's soul. Though the specifics remain hidden from her at first, she knows the signs of devastation too well, for she has lived them herself. The moment she learns of Thomas and Eva's encounter, Leslie's instincts ignite. She vows not to let Eva drown in the same way she once did. For Leslie, protecting Eva becomes both a mission and a penance, a chance to rewrite the past by guiding her daughter towards strength rather than surrender. But questions remain. Will Eva find herself once more drawn back to Thomas, repeating the cycle even as she knows it will only bring pain? Her heart, fragile and confused, longs for comfort, and Thomas is the only one who has given her that illusion in recent memory. The danger of relapse looms, the temptation to call him, to invite him back into her bed under the pretense of love or closure. Each time she imagines it, she feels both disgust and yearning, trapped in a paradox she cannot escape. Leslie sees this weakness, this flicker of temptation, and fears her daughter will become a mirror of her own mistakes, doomed to chase after a man who will never truly choose her. The storm has only just begun to gather its force, and the lives entangled in this web of betrayal, guilt, and longing are only beginning to fracture. The question is not merely who will end up together but who will survive the emotional carnage intact. For Eva, Kat, Thomas, and even Leslie, the gates have opened, and what lies beyond them is far darker than any of them are prepared to face. Kat's silence after the confrontation becomes more dangerous than her rage. Anger at least could be expressed, thrown like daggers into the air, but silence festers. She withdraws from her usual circle, ignoring calls, ignoring texts, shutting herself off in a cocoon of bitterness. The betrayal by both her sister and her lover has cut her deeper than anything in her past. She finds herself reliving every laugh, every night she spent with Thomas, only to imagine Eva in her place. Every smile suddenly feels counterfeit, every touch replaced by the shadow of her sister. Her sense of reality fractures. Even in public, people notice the change. Kat's eyes are colder, her sharp wit dulled into something harsher. Nicole notices first. She has always been attuned to Kat's moods, and she recognizes the signs of collapse hidden beneath her friend's mask of strength. Nicole presses for answers, but Kat dodges, unwilling to admit the humiliation aloud. Pride chains her, but eventually, the dam cracks. After one too many drinks, her words spill, heavy with venom, telling Nicole everything. Thomas stepping out of Eva's bathroom in nothing but a towel, Eva's attempts to justify the act, and Thomas's hollow apologies. Nicole listens without interruption, her hands clenched, her jaw set tight enough to ache. Nicole's loyalty is fierce, and betrayal is unforgivable in her code. She vows that Eva will not escape the consequences. While Kat is consumed with sorrow, Nicole channels her fury into action. She begins watching Eva, lingering near her apartment, waiting for the moment to unleash the reckoning she believes is owed. In her mind, family ties mean nothing when they are broken so cruelly. Eva had a choice, and she chose betrayal. Nicole will not rest until Kat feels avenged, until Eva understands that actions have weight. Meanwhile, Thomas continues his campaign of desperation. He follows Kat, calls her, shows up uninvited, begging her to listen. His words are frantic, his eyes bloodshot, his voice a storm of regret. But every plea rings hollow against the memory of him in Eva's apartment. Kat cannot shake the image. Each attempt he makes only deepens her disgust, each confession more pathetic than the last. She begins to wonder whether Thomas even understands what he's apologizing for, whether it's truly remorse or simply fear of losing the safety she represented. Eva, on the other hand, sinks deeper into self-loathing. She watches Thomas chase after Kat and feels herself reduced to an afterthought, a disposable secret he wishes had never existed. Her mind replays his words of dismissal, the empty thank you that lingers like poison. She compares herself to her mother over and over, cursing the cycle she swore to break but somehow stumbled into anyway. Nights stretch endlessly as she weeps, clutching at her chest as though the ache might subside if she holds tight enough. Sleep becomes a stranger, and her thoughts darken. She flirts with the edge of despair, imagining what it would feel like to end the pain, to silence the voices of judgment in her head. Leslie notices the change in her daughter almost immediately. She has lived through the same spiral, knows the signs all too well, the hollow eyes, the disheveled hair, the brittle smile that fools no one. Leslie confronts Eva gently at first, asking her to open up, to share the burden. Ashamed to admit the truth, afraid that even her mother will recoil at what she has done. It takes time, but eventually the dam cracks, and Eva sobs out her confession. Night with Thomas, the way he discarded her, the eruption with Kat. Leslie listens with a heavy heart, her own regrets echoing in every word. For Leslie, this is not just her daughter's story but her own mistakes repeating before her eyes. She realizes the cycle will continue unless she intervenes. She vows to protect Eva, not by shielding her from consequences, but by ensuring she does not drown in them. She warns Eva against seeking Thomas again, reminding her that such men do not change, that once betrayal is born, it never disappears. But Eva, fragile and desperate, cannot help but cling to the thought of Thomas as both poison and cure. She imagines him knocking on her door, confessing that he chose her, that she was the one he wanted all along. The fantasy keeps her alive, but it also keeps her chained to despair. Nicole's anger escalates in parallel. When she finally confronts Eva, it is not with words but with raw fury. She corners her outside the apartment, her voice low and cutting, accusing her of destroying Kat's spirit, of stabbing her own sister in the back for a fleeting night of pleasure. Eva, already fragile, breaks under the weight of the assault, sobbing apologies, insisting it was not meant to happen, that she never set out to hurt Kat. But Nicole does not relent. To her, apologies are meaningless. What's done cannot be undone. She warns Eva that if Kat ever falls deeper into despair, if Kat ever breaks further, the blame will fall squarely on Eva's shoulders, and Nicole will make sure she pays for it. This confrontation leaves Eva shattered, trembling in the aftermath. She begins to believe Nicole is right, that she is poison, a curse to everyone around her. The thought pushes her closer to the edge, and Leslie must fight harder to keep her grounded. Leslie tells her that the past cannot be erased but insists it can be survived. She urges Eva to choose survival, to rebuild piece by piece rather than let the shame destroy her. Meanwhile, Thomas's pursuit of Kat reaches a breaking point. One evening, he shows up at her door, his eyes bloodshot, his words tumbling out faster than he can control. He tells her Eva manipulated him, that he was weak, that it was never love. Kat listens silently, her expression unreadable, and when he finishes, she asks him one simple question: if it meant nothing, why did you stay the night? The silence that follows is damning. Thomas cannot answer, because deep down, he knows the intimacy was not meaningless. Kat slams the door in his face, leaving him to stew in his failure. Kat's strength begins to re-emerge slowly, but it is tempered by scars. She refuses to forgive Thomas, and she distances herself from Eva, though part of her wonders whether complete severance is even possible when blood ties them. She begins pouring her energy into herself, building walls higher than ever before. Nicole stands at her side, encouraging the detachment, reminding her that survival sometimes means cutting off those who harm you, no matter who they are. Eva watches from afar, yearning for reconciliation with Kat, but too ashamed to reach out. Each attempt she drafts messages, letters, phone calls ends up deleted or torn apart. She imagines Kat's voice dismissing her, Nicole's fury waiting in the wings, and she cannot find the courage to press send. Thomas, sensing his hold slipping on both sisters, spirals further. He drinks, he pleads, he burns every bridge in his frantic attempt to reclaim what he's lost. In doing so, he becomes his own undoing, a man revealed not as the prize both women once believed him to be but as a hollow figure consumed by his own fear of being alone. Leslie, in her quiet strength, becomes the anchor. She refuses to let Eva drown, even when Eva resists. Even when Eva lashes out in shame. She tells her daughters stories of her own mistakes, not as warnings but as confessions, hoping Eva will see that survival is possible even after ruin. Slowly, piece by piece, Eva begins to accept the truth. Thomas is not her salvation, and Kat may never forgive her, but her life does not have to end in despair. The tension among them all simmers, unresolved, the air heavy with unfinished business. Kat's silence remains a wall Eva cannot breach. Nicole's fury hangs like a storm cloud. Thomas's desperation festers unchecked, and Leslie's quiet determination struggles against the tide. The story teeters on the edge of collapse or redemption, each choice by these characters a stone that could tip the balance. Whether forgiveness is possible, whether cycles can be broken, remains uncertain. But one truth becomes clear: none of them will emerge unchanged. The fracture lines among them deepen into a chasm, but endings are not born in sudden explosions. They emerge from the slow burn of choices made and truths faced. As the dust of betrayal and grief begins to settle, the paths of each character move toward an inevitable crossing, one last collision that will decide whether destruction or survival defines them. Kat, though still haunted, grows stronger as weeks pass. She throws herself into work, into exercise, into anything that keeps her body moving so her mind does this not linger on Eva and Thomas. Her nights are still plagued by dreams, Thomas's face blending with Eva's, but she forces herself awake, reminding herself that pain is temporary if she doesn't feed it. Nicole remains her rock, fierce and protective, urging her to cut away the weakness entirely. Yet Kat begins to feel the weight of Nicole's anger pressing on her, realizing that if she lets Nicole fight her battles too long, she will never reclaim her own agency. Slowly, Kat starts making choices for herself, not dictated by rage, not dictated by grief, but by a desire to heal. Eva, fragile but alive, tries to rebuild under Leslie's guidance. Her mother's words finally start to settle in her bones, that mistakes do not define her, but how she faces them will. She begins attending therapy, at first reluctantly, then with a sense of relief that she can finally confess the storm inside her without fear of judgment. She avoids Thomas, deletes his messages, and though her hands sometimes itch to call him in weakness, she resists. Eva starts writing again, pouring her pain into journals, transforming her shame into something tangible, something she can hold and release. Yet the silence from Kat gnaws at her, reminding her that the wound she caused in her sister may never heal. Leslie feels both pride and guilt. She sees Eva take steps forward and knows it means her daughter may avoid the spiral she herself once fell into. But she cannot ignore the bitter truth that history almost repeated because of the scars she left behind. Leslie struggles in the quiet moments, replaying her own mistakes with Ted, wondering if her daughter's suffering is a curse inherited from her. Still, she clings to hope that breaking the cycle, standing firm for Eva, might be the redemption she has sought all her life. Thomas, however, unravels. His attempts to win Kat back are met with colder silence, his pleas to Eva ignored. He drinks more heavily, growing reckless, lashing out at anyone who reminds him of his failures. The charm that once drew the sisters now rots into something pathetic, and even he begins to see it when he looks in the mirror. The man who thought he could juggle love and lust, apology and betrayal, realizes he has lost everything. His desperation reaches its climax one night when he shows up at Kat's apartment again, pounding on her door, screaming that he can explain, that she's the only one who ever mattered. Nicole is there, and she nearly drags him off the doorstep with her bare hands. Kat doesn't even open the door. That moment marks the true end for Thomas, not with a final kiss or dramatic reconciliation, but with the hollow thud of silence, the sound of a door that will never open again. The final act belongs to the women. Kat, Eva, Leslie, and Nicole gather not by design but by necessity, drawn together when Leslie insists on a family meeting that cannot be avoided. The air is taut with tension, Nicole glaring daggers at Eva, Kat stiff and silent, Eva trembling with guilt, Leslie trying to hold them all in the same fragile orbit. Words spill slowly at first, cautious and cold, but soon the dam breaks. Eva sobs out another apology, raw and unpolished, confessing that she does not expect forgiveness but cannot live with silence between them. Kat, her face unreadable, listens. She doesn't rush to forgive, doesn't embrace her sister, but for the first time she admits aloud that part of her still loves Eva despite everything. The betrayal shattered her, but it did not erase blood. Nicole bristles at the softness, unwilling to let Eva off the hook. But Leslie intervenes. She reminds them that vengeance and silence both destroy, that healing requires more than punishment. Nicole begrudgingly falls quiet, though her eyes never leave Eva. The night ends not with reconciliation but with a truce, fragile and uneasy, yet real enough to hold. In the weeks that follow, Kat begins to rebuild a cautious relationship with Eva. They are not the sisters they once were, and perhaps never will be again, but Kat allows space for conversations, for small steps toward trust. Eva accepts the distance as part of the price, grateful even for scraps of connection. Nicole watches warily, unwilling to forgive but unwilling to stand in. Kat's way of healing is what she chooses. Leslie remains at Eva's side, her quiet strength the anchor that steadies them all. Thomas fades from their lives, not with fireworks but with silence. His name becomes a shadow none of them speak, a ghost whose power dwindles as time moves forward. His role is no longer as a lover or betrayer but as a lesson, a reminder of what can be lost, of what cannot be rebuilt once trust is shattered. The ending is not clean, not wrapped in a bow, but life rarely is. Kat emerges stronger, scarred but alive, refusing to let betrayal define her. Eva learns that survival is not found in chasing love that destroys, but in reclaiming herself. Leslie finds a measure of redemption in helping her daughter avoid the abyss she once fell into. Nicole remains the guardian, sharp and unyielding, But even she softens enough to accept that Kat must choose her own path to healing. The story closes not with reconciliation or perfect peace, but with resilience. The gates that once opened to betrayal and despair now stand as a threshold to something new, not untouched, not innocent, but enduring. Each of them steps forward, carrying scars, carrying strength, carrying the weight of what was lost and the fragile hope of what can still be rebuilt.